What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. The last 24 hours, we've had a lot happen that we're going to go ahead and go over and talk about and discuss because the tropics are starting to wake up. They've been waking up for the last 24 hours in the Gulf of Mexico, then starting to move into the Atlantic coast and the Bay of Campeche. So we're going to go ahead and go over everything that we have here, starting with Invest 90L, which is the current threat over Florida. So here's what we have right here. An elongated area of low pressure over the Florida Peninsula continues to produce an area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. It's going to be a marginally conducive environment, but regardless of that, heavy rainfall is continuing to remain forecasted for much of Florida. There is still flood watches in effect for a lot of these areas right there. There's been a lot of rainfall already. I've been talking to T-Volt about it. He's been getting affected down there. Same with Alex Baller and a few other of my moderators' staff as well. They've been getting pretty effective. Not effective, but affected down there, right there. So anyway, yeah, like I've been looking at some of the photographs I've been seeing down there. Yeah, it's not looking pretty fantastic to say the very least. Sarasota was under a flash flood warning last night. So overall, it was a pretty scary situation to take a look at. But what could be even scarier is what's coming up right here. This is the situation that we have right here, ladies and gentlemen. We now have a 30% chance of formation in the next 7 days in the Bay of Campeche, and those probabilities have continued to increase with pretty much every update right there. There was one at 8 a.m. Eastern time that had this at 20%. Now we're up to 30%. So here's what we have going on as of right now. A broad area of low pressure could form over the weekend across the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Environmental conditions appear conducive for some slow development early next week while the system slowly moves westward or northwestward. A 30% chance of formation in the next 7 days, 10% in the next 48 hours for 90L, and 20% in the next 7 days. Where is this Bay of Campeche situation coming from? What are we looking at this current point? Well, it has something to do with what may be going on in the Eastern Pacific with the influence of the gyre before moving out and moving towards the Bay of Campeche from here. So that's what we have going on right here. This is what we're potentially paying attention to. If we go ahead and show you on satellite what we're talking about, where we got to pay attention for this area over here in Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, those areas right there because of the gyre. And then you're going to have stuff starting to ramp up over here in the Bay of Campeche. And then you're going to, because this is where it's located at and because this is in the Gulf of Mexico, there's a relatively high risk that land and people are going to get impacted by this. How strong is it going to get? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the conditions that are both for it and against development, and as well as potential strengthening as well. So here's what we have with the global sea temperatures. The Bay of Campeche, where we are at right now in the global sea temperature mark, we can go ahead and give you an update on that. This is what we have pulled up for you right here, just to give you a better optimal view. Is we're looking at a lot of areas of 30 plus degrees Celsius or 86 plus degrees Fahrenheit for those of you who are living in the United States across a lot of these areas in the Bay of Campeche, right where this is expected to develop, at least in the next week or so, according to every single model that I have been taking a look at. So that's my main concern right there. The global sea temperatures are going to be incredibly warm, 30 plus degrees Celsius, and the ocean heat content across this region is also getting pretty high. We're getting up to 75 to 100 OHC across a lot of these regions over here. We are absolutely going to have to pay very close attention to that as more information continues to come out. And we are looking at OHC across the Gulf of Mexico becoming pretty high for this time of year. You typically don't see these OHC values until we get to August or September. Right now, it is June 12th, and we're already seeing OHC values over 100. And more OHC values over 150 where the loop current is. So we're absolutely going to have to pay attention to that. That warm water and the OHC in the Bay of Campeche looks like it's going to fuel a possible system over there if it stays in the water for long enough. So that's the situation that we have. Wind shear that I've been paying attention to right here. We can give you the latest update for it right here. The wind shear in the Bay of Campeche is one of the few areas in the tropical Atlantic Ocean that has low wind shear. So this is looking like the optimal place for some organization and some development in the next few days or so. We'll have to pay very close attention to that wind shear right there, because if it increases or decreases just a little bit, it could honestly change the chances of a tropical cyclone forming dramatically, as well as the intensity that it might become. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and take a look at the situation that we have right here. We're going to go ahead and show you the shear forecast that we have pulled up right here, the 200 to 850 millibar shear. This is what we have going on right here. Very low wind shear across much of the Bay of Campeche and southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and that is expected to persist for quite a bit. Yeah, there's going to be the influence of a ridge going on, which right there for the next couple of days or so, that could possibly bring some more wind shear to a lot of these regions right there. But by the time we start to see some organization and development, that ridge is going to start to subside and push further to the north, and then we're going to start seeing a pocket of low wind shear that this could feed off of. And another thing that this wind shear could do, because of the orientation of the winds, is at least comparative to this tropical cyclone that's possibly forming, is it could help strengthen the outflow and help allow for more moisture and allow for more flow and allow for more potential intensity because of the orientation and because it's far enough away for that to happen right here. If it's pretty much in the northern half of the Gulf of Mexico and we see a rotation situation like that with the jets right here, that's what you're going to be potentially looking for tropical development, at least in the case where shear actually is helpful than more so than hurtful for it. So we'll have to pay very, very close attention to that as more data continues to come in. Let's go ahead and take a look at the moisture in the region just to kind of see, what's the dry air going to look like, because that's that's going to be a situation where ultimately, if there's going to be dry air, there's not going to be as high of a chance for that to happen. So let's go ahead and go to the Gulf of Mexico, and here's what we got for the Bay of Campeche. There's a cluster of thunderstorms moving through right there that is not affiliated with the tropical development for this coming week. I repeat, this is not affiliated with this. What it's doing right now, though, is it's moistening the atmosphere in the Bay of Campeche and priming it for when these thunderstorms do move into the area. They can organize and develop pretty quickly. A lot of the Gulf of Mexico, though, remains pretty dry. There is some thunderstorms associated with 90L that are moistening up the atmosphere a little bit across parts of the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. But ultimately, time will tell and see what happens, at least for a lot of these regions right here in the Gulf. We can go ahead and take a look at the moisture forecast that we have pulled up right here. We can go ahead and show you what we're potentially looking at. Here's what we have going on right here. Let's go ahead and move out to about 72 hours just to get an optimal viewpoint of how we can start this whole thing out. So yeah, what we have quite a bit of dry air across a lot of these regions right here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll have to pay close attention to that. Here's what we're looking at 4 days out. There's going to be a bit of an increase of moisture across much of the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to allow for tropical development to happen. And that by the time we get to 5 days out, that dry air kind of subsides across a lot of the Gulf of Mexico as there's going to be more rain activity, and as you're going to see a large plume of moisture move through from Central America and the Eastern Pacific Ocean. This is why we're so concerned about this, because we have low wind shear, we have very warm waters in the Bay of Campeche and Gulf of Mexico, and now we have the moist air to back it up. Those three things right there are the most important things I need to pay attention to when forecasting for tropical cyclones. Because if you have cold water, you're not going to get tropical development. You're not going to get much convection firing off of that. If you have high wind shear, the convection is going to just be torn apart from it, because it's not associated with any fronts that you see in the mid latitudes in the United States. And if you have dry air, that's not going to allow for convection to fire up maybe further than about maybe 800 millibars above the atmosphere, which for those of you who do not know, that's about 7,000 feet up, and that's not the heights you need if you want severe tropical development. And optimally, if you want tropical development to happen, you're going to need plumes that are over 30,000 feet into the air. Just giving you guys some perspective right there. So that's what we're looking at right here. And as we continue to start seeing these things organizing and develop, it's this whole system, if it does happen, it's going to be protected by this huge moisture plume across a lot of these regions right there. I mean, yeah, Texas is going to have a little bit of dry air in it, but that's going to do absolutely nothing to the tropical cyclone development over here. So that's optimally something you need to pay attention to. I know I say optimally a lot. I know it's a pretty thick word and everything like that, but I like using that word, and it kind of helps enhance my point quite a bit, at least regarding this. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the forecast just to kind of give an objective view to this, at least this tropical development over here in the Bay of Campeche, as well as Invest 90L to see if that will organize into a tropical depression or tropical storm. So here's what we have going on right here. The reason I haven't been taking a look at 90L is because I know it's going to be battling a lot of wind shear. It's going to be battling a bit of dry air. We talked about this yesterday, so we'll still have to pay attention to it. But optimally, it's not looking like it's going to be a very high chance for tropical development, although the European, interestingly, though, does have a tropical storm organizing and developing off the coast of North Carolina, but it's going to be far enough away for really no impacts to happen in the East Coast anymore. So I am not overall worried about that. This is going to transition into a frontal boundary and a mid-latitude cyclone before moving on from here on out right then and there. But now let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in Central America, because this line of thunderstorms that's going to be moving through the Eastern Pacific is why we're going to start seeing the possibility for tropical development. That large moisture plume right there starting 5 days out from now. So we'll have to pay close attention to that. So this thing is starting to organize and develop, potentially strengthen up into a hurricane possibly, according to the European, before making landfall in parts of Mexico over here. Here's what I'm thinking, at least when it comes of landfall right here, because if this thing does develop in the Gulf of Mexico, it's absolutely a guarantee it's going to make landfall somewhere. Because there's a bit of a ridge influence, and we showed you that with the wind shear over here, because there's this ridge that's influencing it right here, it's most likely not gonna be making landfall in the United States unless that ridge pushes up a couple hundred miles further north. And even then, you'll see a possible landfall site in maybe like Texas, if you're lucky, or anything like that. Texas, like especially South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, Brownsville, all those areas right there, McAllen, are definitely going to see some rain, definitely going to see some winds with this. Question is, how bad is it going to be in those regions right there? Optimally, if we're taking a look at the European forecast, it's not going to be terrible. Yeah, you're going to get some rain showers. Yeah, you're going to get some gusty winds. But it's still something to pay attention to, especially if that track moves further to the north, and especially if this thing slows down and stays over water longer. Because even though this thing is going to be rapidly organizing, it's only going to be over the Bay of Campeche and Gulf of Mexico for 3 days at most. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on it as we get more information. Let's go ahead and show you the AI model just to kind of show you just put it into the algorithm and put it into the aggregate. So that's what we have going on 5 days out. You start seeing organization and development. The AI model wants this thing to make landfall in South Texas, which I get, again, that is a possibility if the ridge moves up a little bit further to the north than we were thinking. But right now, I think that pretty interesting. That's going to be making landfall as a tropical storm, maybe winds of 60 miles per hour at this current point. So that's going to be an interesting trend to take a look at going forward from here. That's the AI model. Let's go ahead and show you the GFS model. Here's what we have with the GFS. The GFS is having maybe a little bit of tropical development with 90L, but overall, I'm not particularly that worried about it. I'm more so worried about this whole thing. This is the 0Z that we have. It's having a tropical storm organizing and developing and making landfall in parts of northeastern Mexico over here. That's the 0Z run as it starts to make landfall, brings plenty of rainfall to South Texas and everything like that. So I'll have to pay close attention to that. Let's go ahead and show you the 6Z for comparison, just to kind of see how this is trending. The GFS has been uptrending quite a bit in the last few model runs. We're looking at 996 millibar, either strong tropical storm or weak hurricane, making landfall in Mexico. I know Veracruz is over here to the south of it, and I do think a Veracruz landfall is possible, but that's going to, again, be dependent on how much further to the north the ridge is going to be and how much further to the south well, just how much less time there's going to be over water. So that's what we have with the GFS right here. It's ultimately looking like it's going to be a tropical storm, maybe weak hurricane at best at this current point in time, but hey, anything can change. This is still weather right here. Here's the CMC model that we have pulled up for you right here. CMC is pretty interesting, to say the very least. CMC wants this thing to be a hurricane before making landfall near Veracruz over here, which is pretty interesting, which means that a South Texas impact will be less likely, and it'll be more of an impact towards Mexico City and a lot of these regions over here in the more mountainous areas of Mexico over here. Either way, we're still looking at tropical development nevertheless. So that's what we have with the CMC. The NavGem model, we can go ahead and pull that up for you. NavGem doesn't go as far out, but it does give you a good indicator of just kind of the organization and development. If we go ahead and show you the 12Z, it's really uptrended. 990 millibars. Similar to what we were seeing with the CMC, similar to what we're seeing with a lot of these models, it's staying over water longer, which is not optimal if you do not want a hurricane landfall, which I don't think anyone does. And this is something that we need to continue to pay very close attention to as more data continues to come out. Because if we're seeing a 990 millibar tropical system right here, we can show you the 850 millibar height and winds. They're not the best indicator or anything like that, but it's the best we can do at this current point with the NavGem. Yeah, it's getting close to hurricane force winds at that current point. That's the NavGem. Let's go ahead and pull up the Icon model right here. Icon wants this as a strong tropical storm making landfall in northeastern Mexico. So yeah, what we're looking at is we're starting to see three main things with this. The first thing we're seeing is we're seeing an increased probability of tropical development in the Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico. Second thing we're seeing is a possible uptrend in the models, because what I'm taking a look at this and what I'm seeing with all of this is the 0Z runs are kind of a bit all over the place, at least with those that have come out. 12Z model runs are really starting to uptrend this to strong tropical storm category 1 hurricane status, which with the good conditions that it's going to be under, I can definitely see happening, and that was my third point. There's really good conditions to allow this to happen, at least for the 3 days or so that's projected to remain offshore. Now, if all those things happen, things are going to be very interesting, and it might set a prelude to what we will see later this hurricane season, but I've been rambling on for over 17 minutes at this current point, so I'll go ahead and close the video out by saying this. You guys need to prepare for what we're possibly going to be seeing if you're in Texas or in Mexico. I will keep you updated on the forecasts as more information continues to come out, and you'll bet your bottom dollar I will keep you updated if anything big starts to happen. We'll keep you updated here. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. And if you have any insight for us to consider and you want to help us out, or just kind of chill behind the scenes of Pat's Path Predictor, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.